430 hours. Northern Pacific, east of Sakhalin Island. The dawn light never quite reaches this far north. It seeps instead gray and dim like smoke on the horizon. The sea is steel-cold, restless, and the fog lies thick enough to taste. Beneath it, cutting silently through the black depths, the USS Barb SS-220 glides forward like a shark with iron skin. Inside her narrow control room, red lights pulse softly. The air smells of oil, sweat, and coffee gone sour hours ago. Condensation drips from the overhead pipes as the hum of electric motors fills the space, steady, disciplined like a heartbeat under pressure. Commander Eugene Fluckey, 34 years old, leans over the periscope well. His hands are calm, his eyes sharp. He's been at this for weeks, stalking Japanese supply convoys moving between Hokkaido and Sakhalin. Depth 60 feet. All stop, he says quietly. The helmsman's voice answers from below the din. Aye, aye, sir. Depth 60. Fluckey wipes fog from the periscope lens. The sea above is gray-white, rolling gently. For a moment there's nothing. Then there. A flicker. Smoke on the horizon. A column of it, then another. The faint hum of propellers through the hull becomes distinct, rhythmic. A convoy. He lowers the scope and grins a quick wolfish grin that breaks the stillness. Gentlemen, he says softly, we've got company. The USS Barb was no ordinary submarine. By mid-1944, she'd become the hunter's hunter. 45 patrols, more than 20 confirmed sinkings, and a commander who broke every rule in the book. Fluckey wasn't reckless. He was deliberate but unchained by the cautious doctrine that crippled so many early U.S. subs. He glances at the sound man crouched over his headphones. Talk to me, Sparks. Multiple screws, sir. Fast turns merchantmen. Heavy escorts. At least one destroyer. How far bearing 085 range? 9,000 yards and closing. Fluckey's mind clicks through data like gears. Northbound route. He'd expected this. Japanese convoys heading for Sakhalin carried coal oil and supplies lifeblood for the dying empire. Bring her to periscope depth. Battle stations torpedo. Klaxon bells clang through the submarine. Boots thud on steel. Hatches slam shut. Men slide into cramped compartments where each movement is measured in inches. In the forward torpedo room, sailors ready the Mark 18 electric torpedoes, silent killers for an ambush like this. Bow 447 hours. Fluckey raises the periscope again. Through the mist, shapes emerge. Fat silhouettes of freighters lumber through the gray. He counts 7, maybe 8. On the flanks, 2 lean destroyers cut the water like knives. He adjusts the optics. Japanese flags whip faintly from their masts. The lead ship, a tanker, leaves a thick ribbon of exhaust trailing behind. He lowers the scope and speaks quietly. Target convoy course 070. Speed 8 knots. We're inside their shadow, he adds. Lewis scribbles figures into the TDC. We'll let 'em pass right over us. Then we'll hit the belly. All of them, Fluckey says flatly. He turns toward the intercom. Engine room, stand by for full battery burst. We'll need every amp you've got. The reply crackles back. Aye, sir. We're juiced and ready. The seconds stretch thin. Every man aboard feels it, the growing tremor of enemy screws. At last, Fluckey whispers, up periscope. He sights again. The convoy looms large now, less than a mile away. Fire 1. Thump. Fire 2. Thump. Fire 3 and 4. Thump. Thump. Each thump echoes through the hull, the sound of death slipping silently into the deep. Seconds later, the sea explodes. A geyser of fire and water erupts beneath the lead tanker. The ship lifts out of the ocean, as if struck by a fist from below. The second torpedo hits a cargo vessel midships. The explosion tears it in half. Hit too solid, Lewis shouts. They're breaking formation. Bring us right under their noses. We're not done yet. Pings echo. Good Fluckey mutters, let 'em come. Depth charges begin to fall. The first detonates 100 yards off, shaking the hull. Depth 150 feet, make it 200. The deck tilts. 2 destroyers closing range decreasing. They'll cross our stern in 30 seconds. The depth charges fall closer, thunder underwater, concussion waves slamming against the hull. Yet no one speaks. The crew of the Barb knows their commander. They trust his madness because it always works. The last detonation rolls away into silence. Bring her up. Periscope depth. The periscope rises again through dark water. The convoy is chaos incarnate. Ships scatter in every direction, smoke and fire marking their trails. The escorts have turned away. He lowers the scope. We're going back in. Sir, again, they think we're gone. He moves to the aft tubes. Ready 5 and 6, ready fire. 2 more torpedoes streak out. Seconds later, the horizon blooms again. Another freighter's magazine detonates in a fireball. 3 confirmed kills. Fluckey exhales. No, make that 4. One of those tankers won't make it home. Gentlemen, we just turned the Sea of Okhotsk into a fireworks show. The crew erupts in muffled cheers, quickly stifled as another ping echoes through the hull. Party's over. Time to disappear. 0508 hours. Engines hum to life as Barb dives deeper, sliding into the blackness below 300 feet. Above, Japanese escorts crisscross the burning sea, dropping depth charges into empty water. Fluckey leans back, exhausted but exhilarated. He's just rewritten the playbook for submarine warfare. He closes his logbook. Send a message to Pearl. Mission complete. Convoy destroyed. No casualties. Crew in good spirits, he adds with a grin. And one more line. Lewis looks up. Sir, tell him Fluckey says we're not done yet. 0509 hours, July 26th, 1944, 200 feet below the surface. Sea of Okhotsk. The world above rages in fire and thunder, but below, in the black belly of the sea, the USS Barb moves like a ghost. Her hull creaks softly, groaning under the weight of the Pacific. Water seeps down the bulkheads in thin rivulets. The men barely breathe. Fluckey's voice cuts through the tension, calm, firm, precise. Helm steady at course 180, speed 2 knots. The reply comes almost in a whisper. Aye, sir. 2 knots. He moves to the chart table, where the red light paints his face in hard lines. His XO Lieutenant John Lewis stands beside him, scanning the sonar plot. They're hunting Skipper. Pings from 3 directions. They've got a net out. Fluckey glances up. Let 'em think they do. They're listening for us to run. We'll crawl instead. The sonar man, Chief Jones, listens through his headset, turning knobs with slow precision. The room is so silent that the men can hear the faint squeal of the destroyer's propellers echoing through the hull like wolves circling unseen prey. Jones mutters, bearing 085, 090, and 110 closing. One's dropping something. Depth charge, Lewis asks. Jones shakes his head. No splash yet. Maybe sonar buoys. Fluckey doesn't look up. They don't have buoys up here. Too far north. That's bait. He traces a pencil across the map, the thin line marking their path through the Okhotsk. We stay deep, we live. Simple as that. 5:15 hours. The next explosion proves him right. The shock wave rolls through the water like a hammer. Men clutch pipes and bulkheads. The lights flicker, one bulb shattering above the chart table. A spray of glass falls like ice. Depth charge, someone yells from the engine room. Fluckey doesn't flinch. All compartments report. Voices echo down the tight corridors. Forward room secure. Control room holding engines steady. He nods. Good. That's the best they've got. Lewis exhales, trying to steady his hands. Skipper, we can't stay under forever. Batteries draining. Fluckey checks the gauge. 60%. We'll surface when they stop guessing and start retreating. Until then, we play dead. He leans closer to the sonar man. Talk to me, Jones. Where are my friends? Jones adjusts his dial, listening hard. The closest destroyer's circling. He's throwing tin cans everywhere but hitting nothing. 2 others are breaking off. They're chasing phantom contacts. Good, Fluckey murmurs. Let the ghosts keep 'em busy. 0527 hours. The sea grows quiet again. The last charge goes off somewhere in the distance, a dull thud that fades like a heartbeat fading away. Fluckey glances around the cramped control room. All right, boys. Time to see if the sky's still on fire. Surface, Lewis asks. Surface, Fluckey says, quietly. The diving officer calls out, blow main ballast up, trim 5 degrees. Air hisses through the pipes. The submarine tilts upward, rising through the cold darkness. The sound of bubbles against the hull is soft, almost gentle, as the depth gauge ticks upward 150 feet, 160. At 50 feet, the boat steadies. Fluckey grips the periscope handle, scope up. The mirror breaks the surface, slicing through the oily black water. He wipes the lens and peers through. The horizon is chaos ships burning, one still sinking bow first. Smoke stretches across the dawn sky like torn silk. Fluckey smiles faintly. She's beautiful. Lewis looks at him. Beautiful. Fluckey's grin widens. To a submariner, that's the sunrise. He sweeps the periscope across the horizon. One destroyer remains weaving erratically among the wrecks. The rest of the convoy is gone. He lowers the scope. All ahead 1/3. Keep her shallow. We'll follow that bastard's wake. Lewis frowns. Follow, sir, we're still inside his sonar range. Exactly, Fluckey says. That's why he'll never expect us there. 5:42 hours. The Barb creeps just below the surface, her engines whispering. The crew moves with ritual precision. Fluckey paces behind the sonar station, listening to Jones hum under his breath as he tracks the destroyer. He's running scared, Jones mutters. Changes course every 2 minutes. No pattern. That's fear, Fluckey says. Let's feed it. He gestures to the helmsman. Match his course 1,000 yards behind. Keep us in his baffles. We'll ride his shadow until the sun's up. Lewis gives him a look that's half awe, half disbelief. You're going to trail a Japanese destroyer? Fluckey nods. Closest escort to shore means closest to home. He'll lead us straight to his harbor and the rest of their fleet. The crew exchange wary glances. No one speaks against him. They've learned by now that his madness has a pattern, a terrifying kind of logic. 6:15 hours. Through the periscope, the destroyer looms in the early light, her wake glowing silver behind her. Beyond her, faint in the distance, lie the dark shapes of islands, the southern tip of Sakhalin. Fluckey murmurs, There's our target, the shoreline. Convoy lanes right through here. We'll wait until nightfall and finish the job. Lewis whispers, Sir. We're out of forward fish. Fluckey smirks. That's why we've got rockets. It's true. The USS Barb carries something no other submarine in the Pacific, has an experimental 5-inch rocket launcher mounted on her deck. Originally designed for shore bombardment, Fluckey saw a different purpose. A weapon to strike fast and vanish before the enemy even understood what hit them. Lewis lowers his voice. The brass still thinks those are for testing. Fluckey chuckles. Well, tonight we'll give them their results. He looks around the cramped control room, eyes gleaming under the red lights. Gentlemen, we've got a date with Destiny, and she's waiting on that coastline. He grips the periscope handle one last time before retracting it. Secure from battle stations. We'll rest while the enemy buries their dead. As the submarine slides quietly away from the wreckage, the fires above reflect faintly on the waves, a flickering eulogy for the ships lost, the men gone, and the empire that still doesn't realize it's dying. Fluckey leans back in the command chair and closes his eyes. We're not just hunters anymore, he says softly. We're the storm. 2200 hours, July 26th, 1944, off the southern coast of Sakhalin Island. The USS Barb rides the surface, now engines throttled low, the ocean around her calm and black as oil. The northern sky glows faintly with the ghost light of the aurora, a curtain of green shimmer that bends and fades above the horizon. To the east, the dark outline of Sakhalin looms like a sleeping beast. The crew move quietly across the deck, wrapped in heavy coats against the polar wind. Their breath turns to fog in the red glow of the bridge lights. Somewhere out there, hidden behind that stretch of coastline, lies a Japanese convoy anchorage, a cluster of cargo ships and tankers taking refuge after the morning slaughter. Commander Eugene Fluckey stands on the bridge, binoculars pressed to his face. His expression is carved from ice. "Soundings confirm we're in 15 fathoms," he says. "That's shallow enough to get us killed if they spot us." Lieutenant John Lewis adjusts the chart table beside him. "We'll only need 10 minutes topside, Skipper." Fluckey lowers the glasses. The reflection of the aurora glints off the lenses. 10 minutes, he repeats. Then we vanish back into the deep. Below decks, the men of the Rocketeer detail assemble around their improvised launcher. An 8-tube rack bolted onto the forward casing of the deck gun. The tubes are crude, ugly, and lethal 5-inch spin-stabilized rockets designed for beach bombardment. Fluckey had signed for them at Pearl as test ordnance. Tonight they're about to become history. Chief Harold Swede Olson, the senior torpedo man, wipes frost from the warheads and checks the firing circuits. All tubes wired and loaded, Skipper. Fuses set to instant. Fluckey descends the conning tower ladder, crouching beside him. The commander runs a gloved hand along the nearest tube, feeling the cold metal hum faintly under tension. "Good work, Swede. Make sure your men stay behind the blast shield when she goes. These things have never been fired from a boat underway." Olson grins, teeth white in the dim light. "Hell, sir, we'll find out together." Fluckey nods once. That's the spirit that wins wars. 22:35 hours. The submarine drifts closer to the shoreline, engines barely ticking over. The smell of brine and diesel mixes with something distant smoke. Through the binoculars, the anchorage comes into focus, a half-moon bay dotted with silhouettes of ships. Lanterns gleam faintly on their decks. The Japanese believe they're safe this far north. Fluckey lowers the glasses. Target group confirmed, at least 6 merchantmen, 1 small escort. He turns to the bridge phone. Sound battle station, surface action. Klaxons blare softly through the boat. Below decks, the men snap into motion. Valves hiss, ammunition clinks, boots pound on the steel deck. The voice of the chief of the boat echoes up from below. All compartments report ready. Fluckey looks to Lewis. "All right, number 1. Let's show Tokyo what American ingenuity looks like." The deck crew swing the launcher into firing position. The sea is calm enough that the sub barely rolls. The stars above flicker through thin cloud. From this range, less than 4,000 yards, the Japanese convoy is unaware that death is staring straight at it through the dark. Fluckey steps to the intercom. "All stations stand by. Range 3800. Firing sequence 1 through 8, ripple pattern, 5-second spacing." "Ready, sir." He takes a long breath, feeling the cold sting his lungs. Fire 1. A streak of flame erupts from the launcher, slicing into the night. The rocket arcs high, a burning comet against the aurora's green glow. Seconds later, it slams into the deck of the nearest freighter. The explosion flashes white, then orange, a sun blooming on the horizon. Fire 2. Another roar, another streak, another ship ignites. The men cheer quietly, unable to hold it in. "Keep it steady," Fluckey orders. Fire 3 through 8. The deck of the Barb becomes a thunder platform. Rockets scream into the sky one after another, their exhaust lighting the waves in waves of silver and flame. Each impact finds its mark, a tanker, a trawler, a supply vessel, until the bay itself is ablaze. From shore, Japanese guns open fire blindly, their tracers flashing red across the darkness. Shells fall short, hissing into the sea. Fluckey watches through binoculars, voice low. "Look at that. Whole damn convoy's burning." Lewis, still half deaf from the blast's, laughs. "You just wrote the first chapter in submarine rocket warfare." Fluckey grins, teeth white in the red light. "And probably the last one if this thing blows up under us." 22:43 hours. A searchlight suddenly flares from the shore, sweeping across the bay. It finds the smoke first, then the line of the Barb's conning tower cutting through the waves. "Spotlight dead ahead," Lewis shouts. "Hard right rudder engines ahead, flank," Fluckey snaps. The diesels roar to life. The submarine heels hard as she turns, spray washing across the bridge. Bullets whine overhead. One smacks the periscope housing, sparking. Dive, dive, dive. The alarm wails. Men leap for the hatches. The The deck crew drops flat as the conning tower hatch slams shut above them. Seawater crashes over the casing as the Barb plunges into the depths, rockets still smoking on the surface. 22:46 hours. 50 feet down the control room hums with urgent energy. The ballast tanks hiss the boat angles downward. Fluckey grips the handrail, water dripping from his coat. Level her off at 100 feet. Course 180. Lewis wipes his face. They're pinging us already. Let 'em, Fluckey says. They're blind and panicking. They'll shoot each other before they hit us. The sonar headset crackles with chaos, frantic Japanese voices overlapping pings, depth charges splashing into the water far astern. Chief Jones mutters, "Sounds like they're tearing the bay apart." Fluckey glances at him. "Good. Then our work here's done." 2300 hours. At 150 feet, the Barb slips beneath the thermocline where sound bends and dies. The crew sit in the dim red glow, listening to the fading rumble of explosions above. Fluckey opens the ship's logbook and writes in neat, steady letters. July 26, 1944, Northern Pacific off Sakhalin Island. Executed surface rocket attack on anchored convoy. 8 rockets expended multiple hits, observed fires throughout anchorage. No counterfire damage sustained. Evasion successful. He sets down his pen and exhales slowly. That ought to make the Admiralty's eyebrows pop. Lewis chuckles. "Sir, you just bombarded Japan from a submarine. You think they'll believe it?" Fluckey smiles, tired but satisfied. They will when they see the photographs. He looks up at the glowing compass. The ship hums quietly beneath him. All ahead, 1/3. Set course south. Let's take Our Lady home. The Barb slides away beneath the burning sea, leaving behind a coastline lit by its own destruction. A smoldering scar that would send shockwaves through the Imperial Navy for months to come. Fluckey folds his arms and whispers to no one in particular. "For the men who never come back. We'll make every torpedo, every rocket count." Above them, the night sky burns green and orange, a strange, ghostly aurora that witnesses the first submarine in history to strike land with rockets and survive to tell the tale. July 27, 1944, 0:30 hours, 40 nautical miles east of Sakhalin Island. The USS Barb runs silent. The engines are off. Only the low hum of the batteries fills the air. The crew speaks in whispers. Every movement, every breath feels too loud. Above them, unseen in the black, the Imperial Japanese Navy is coming. Sonar picks up the faint rhythm of propellers, destroyers fast and angry, searching for the phantom that turned their anchorage into a funeral pyre. Commander Eugene Fluckey leans over the chart table in the control room. His hands are steady, his voice low but sharp. Bearing 185 to 210, multiple contacts. They're sweeping east. Lieutenant John Lewis, exhausted and drenched in sweat, despite the cold rubs his temples. They must have brought reinforcements from Maoka, at least 3 of them. Fluckey nods. And they're mad as hornets. But we'll make 'em dance to our tune. He turns to the sonar man. "Jones, what's their speed?" Jones tilts his head, eyes closed under the headphones. 20 knots, sir. Running a search pattern. Sounds like Type 13 destroyers, fast but sloppy. Sloppy's good, Fluckey murmurs. Sloppy gets men killed. The crew waits. The red light paints their faces in shades of blood and shadow. Somewhere aft, condensation drips in a steady rhythm. The air is heavy with carbon dioxide and tension. Lewis checks the oxygen gauge. 2 hours at this depth, maybe 3 if we stretch it. Fluckey doesn't answer. He's watching the sonar trace, counting the seconds between pings. He can tell by instinct when a destroyer turns, when it hesitates, when its crew feels something, a ripple in the black water, a whisper of a wake that shouldn't be there. He looks up suddenly. "They've got us." Bearing, Lewis asks. 205 closing fast. Range 1,200 yards. They heard something, maybe the rocket racks rattling when we dived. Fluckey stands tall. All hands brace for depth charges. 0:47 hours. The first one hits. The sea convulses. The lights flicker, gauges rattle, dust falls from the ceiling. Men clutch the rails, jaws clenched, waiting for the next. Close Jones yells over the noise. Another explosion, then another closer each time. The submarine bucks like a wounded animal. Damage report, Fluckey calls. Voices answer through the intercom, tight and fast. Minor leaks in AFT battery compartment. Gyro repeater out. No hull breaches. Lewis wipes blood from his lip where he bit down too hard. They're walking the pattern right over us, Skipper. Fluckey's tone never wavers. Good. That means they think we're still moving. He turns to the helmsman. All stop. Zero sound. We let them chase ghosts. The engines die. The world narrows to silence, broken only by the groaning steel of the hull. 0102 hours. The destroyers pass overhead, their sonar pings washing through the submarine like pulses of light. One of them is so close that the men can hear the faint rumble of depth charge racks being reloaded. The next string of detonations shakes the entire boat. Tools crash to the deck. A valve hisses open near the engine room, spraying vapor. "Seal that off," Lewis shouts. A crewman yells back, "Aye, sir, under control." Fluckey stands still, listening. He counts 1, 2, 3 seconds between blasts, then nods. "They're overshooting us now. They think we're deeper than we are." He gestures. "Level off at 240 feet. Hold course 010. We'll crawl east under their noise. 135 hours. The pings fade. The depth charges grow distant. The submarine moves again, silent and slow. Lewis finally exhales, leaning against the bulkhead. They're pulling off. Fluckey smiles faintly, for now. He looks around the cramped control room at the weary, grease-streaked faces of his men. "Gentlemen, you've just survived what'll probably be called suicide in the manual. Congratulations." A ripple of nervous laughter runs through the crew. He claps Lewis on the shoulder. "Get some coffee in you. We're not done. I want another shot at that convoy route before dawn." Lewis stares at him. "Sir, we just shot half the Imperial Navy out of their beds. You want to go back?" Fluckey grins. "Hell yes. Lightning never hits twice, but torpedoes do. 0210 hours. The Barb glides through the black water, deeper now, hugging the thermocline where the cold current hides her from sonar. Fluckey watches the clock. Timing is everything. The Japanese will assume they're fleeing south toward open sea. He orders the helmsman, "Turn north by northwest. Course 330. Let's slide back under their noses." The crew exchange looks of disbelief, but they obey. The submarine arcs slowly through the depths, circling behind the line of destroyers now sweeping east. Jones whispers, "Sir, they'll never see it coming." "That's the idea," Fluckey replies. "We'll take them from behind like a wolf among whales." 320 hours. Periscope depth again. The surface glistens with faint moonlight through thin cloud. Fluckey raises the periscope slowly, water running down the lens. He sweeps the horizon. The destroyers are distant now, searching the wrong patch of sea. And they're faint and small on the northern horizon, the glow of burning oil from the wrecks they left behind. Lewis leans in. "We going back there?" Fluckey nods. "One more look. If anything's still afloat, we finish it." He lowers the scope. Battle stations torpedo. Klaxons sound once more. The men move slow, methodical, tired but alive. 350 hours. They reach the edge of the wreck field. The ocean smells of smoke and fuel even from below. Fluckey brings the periscope up again. Through the gray water he sees it, the last of the convoy, a crippled freighter listing hard to starboard. Her stern half submerged. A small escort circles her nervously. Lewis whispers, "What's the call, Skipper?" Fluckey's eyes gleam. "We finish what we started." He gives the order. "Tube 1 ready. Set depth 12 feet. Range 800 yards. Fire." The torpedo slides out with a muffled whoosh. Seconds later, the ocean erupts in orange fire. The freighter shatters midships, folding like paper. The escort panics, firing its guns wildly into empty water. Fluckey lowers the scope, voice calm as a church bell. Now we go home. The Barb turns south, her engines humming softly as dawn breaks over the horizon. Behind her, the sea burns, black smoke rising from the wreckage, glowing red in the sunrise. Fluckey leans on the chart table, exhaustion creeping in for the first time. "Gentlemen," he says quietly, "mark this one down. July 26th, 1944, the night the Japanese learned what a single submarine can do. No one answers. They don't need to. The ocean speaks for them, a vast, quiet witness to one of the most daring attacks in naval history. August 8th, 1944, Midway, Atoll, Central Pacific. The USS Barb surfaces from the blue like a beast coming home from the hunt. Her black conning tower glints beneath a Pacific sun so bright it hurts the eyes. The air smells of salt and diesel, and the sea stretches flat and endless all the way to the coral horizon. On the pier, sailors gather, shading their faces. They've heard rumors for days of a submarine that bombarded Japan's shores, that sank a convoy and lived to tell about it. A myth, they thought. Now the myth slides into port with her American flag fluttering. The white shark emblem of USS Barb SS-220, visible on the sail, another victory mark painted in fresh red. As the gangway drops, Commander Eugene Fluckey steps onto the pier first. He's gaunt from weeks at sea, eyes bloodshot, uniform salt-stained. But his back is straight, his grin calm, and the crew behind him look like men who've walked through hell and found gold at the other side. The dock officer salutes. "Welcome home, Commander. Heard you lit up half of northern Japan." Fluckey returns the salute. "Just a small fireworks show, Lieutenant. Independence Day came a little late this year. 900 hours. Inside the Midway operations office, charts are spread across a long table. The smell of cigarette smoke and wet paper fills the room. Senior officers gather as Fluckey and his XO, John Lewis, debrief the mission. To the Pacific Fleet Command representative, Rear Admiral Charles Lockwood, Fluckey speaks plainly without theatrics. "We encountered a convoy near Sakhalin on the morning of July 26th. Engaged with 4 forward torpedoes, confirmed 4 hits, 2 tankers, 2 freighters. Evaded counterattack by 3 destroyers. Returned after nightfall, launched 8 5-inch rockets against anchorage targets. Multiple secondary explosions observed." Lockwood sits back in silence. "You launched what from a submarine?" "Rockets, sir. Deck-mounted, electrically fired, modified from Army naval stores." Lockwood stares. "And they worked?" Fluckey's grin widens. "Perfectly, sir. We even aimed by periscope." A younger officer at the far end whistles. "You realize you just rewrote submarine warfare, Commander?" Fluckey nods. "All due respect, gentlemen, I didn't write it. My crew did." He gestures toward the window where the men of the Barb are unloading crates and laughing among themselves. "They did the impossible. I just gave the order." After the meeting, Lockwood walks him outside. The Admiral's face is thoughtful, the weight of war pressing behind his words. "You know they'll decorate you for this," he says quietly. "Probably the medal." Fluckey squints against the sunlight. "I don't need a medal, sir. Just more fuel." Lockwood smiles. "You'll get both. But you've made yourself a legend, Eugene." Fluckey shakes his head. "Legends don't win wars. Submariners do." Later that afternoon, USS Barb dockside. The crew works to unload spent tubes and spent nerves. The hull bears scratches from depth charges, her paint scarred by salt and time. But she's intact, whole, alive. Below decks, Chief Swede Olsen and torpedo man Bill Wilson scrub the rocket launcher clean. The pipes glow faintly in the lamplight, the smell of scorched powder still thick in the air. Olsen wipes his hands. "You realize, Bill, we're probably the only people on Earth who've fired rockets off a moving sub." Wilson laughs. "Yeah, maybe next time they'll give us wings too." Hell, Olsen says if Fluckey asks for 'em, they'll build him some. They share a laugh that breaks into coughing. The air is heavy but good, the kind of heaviness that comes after survival. That evening, the crew gathers on deck under a fading orange sky. The sun bleeds into the Pacific like spilled paint. Fluckey climbs the conning tower ladder and stands above them, his shadow stretching long across the steel. Men, he begins, his voice carrying over the sound of gulls and engines. I've said before that bravery isn't in the machine, it's in the man who uses it. You've proved that 100 times over. He pauses, glancing down at their faces, tired, sunburned, alive. They called this thing impossible. Said you couldn't hit land from a sub. Couldn't fight convoys head-on. Couldn't survive 3 destroyers dropping steel on your heads. And yet here we are, still breathing, still laughing. Someone shouts, "Still ugly, skipper," and the men erupt in laughter. Fluckey smiles. Aye, ugly as sin and twice as mean. But remember this, every ship we sink, every explosion we light, brings us one day closer to peace. That's why we do it, not for medals, not for glory, for peace. He raises his hand in salute. You've earned a place in the storybooks, boys. Now let's go get some shore leave before the Navy finds another crazy idea for us to try. Cheers erupt across the deck. Someone breaks into song, the kind that only makes sense after weeks underwater and too little sleep. The sun dips below the horizon, and the USS Barb glows gold for one last instant, before fading into dusk, a steel wolf resting before the next hunt. 2 weeks later, Pearl Harbor. The ceremony is brief but thunderous. Cameras flash, reporters scribble, and sailors pack the dockside to see the man who'd dared to bombard Japan itself. Admiral Nimitz himself pins the Medal of Honor to Fluckey's chest. The medal gleams under the Hawaiian sun. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, Nimitz reads aloud. For sinking enemy vessels, for innovation in rocket warfare, and for demonstrating that courage and genius remain the Navy's greatest weapons. The crowd cheers. Fluckey, standing ramrod straight, gives a single nod. When asked by a correspondent what it felt like to be a hero, he answers simply, "A hero's just a man doing his job when the lights go out." That night at a bar near the harbor, Lewis and Olson sit with their commander. The music is low, the beer cold. Lewis raises his glass. To the Barb and to insanity. Fluckey chuckles. To innovation, Mr. Lewis. Sanity never won a war. Olson grins. What's next? Skipper rockets weren't enough. Fluckey stares at the horizon outside the window, the moonlight shining over the water. Next, he says quietly. Next time we go ashore. They laugh, thinking it a joke. It isn't. Because in 6 months' time, under a different sky and a darker night, Eugene Fluckey and his men will crawl onto Japanese soil and plant explosives on a train line. But for now, the Pacific is calm, and the men of the Barb drink to survival, to madness, and to the strange alchemy that turned a submarine into a legend. January 23rd, 1945. Off the coast of Karafuto, Japan, southern Sakhalin Island. The northern sea is a black mirror. Not even the moon dares to look down on it. The USS Barb rides the waves silently, engines muffled, men whispering. Her decks are slick with frost, her conning tower rimmed in ice. The smell of the ocean is sharp, metallic, a scent that tastes like war and secrecy. Below decks, the crew huddles around the chart table. The red lamp flickers, throwing jagged shadows across faces taut with anticipation. Commander Eugene Fluckey stands over the map, tracing his finger along a thin black line that snakes across the coastline. This, he says quietly, is the Imperial Supply Line, the Karafuto-Hokkaido Railway. It runs along the coast. Tonight we're going to stop it. Lieutenant John Lewis stares, "Sir, with torpedoes." Fluckey looks up, eyes gleaming with mischief. "No, Mr. Lewis," with hands. A stunned silence fills the room. Sir Olson finally blurts, "You're talking about going ashore." Fluckey smiles thinly. "Damn right I am." The plan, like all of Fluckey's, walks a razor's edge between genius and insanity. Japanese troop trains have been ferrying reinforcements and supplies from mainland Hokkaido to Sakhalin, slipping through the blockade zones unmolested. The Barb's torpedoes can't reach them, but her crew can. Fluckey taps the chart. "We'll land here near the Sakhalin coast village of Kashiho. Railway lines within 500 yards of the shore. Flat beach. Minimal patrols. We'll send a team of 8. Set a charge under the tracks. Then back to the boat before dawn." Lewis shakes his head in disbelief. Sir, no submarine crew has ever set foot on Japan's home soil. Fluckey grins. Then we'll be the first. History favors the bold Mr. Lewis. 2100 hours. The submarine surfaces beneath a canopy of stars. The wind is bitter, slicing through uniforms and lungs alike. The surf hisses softly against the hull. On deck, the chosen team prepares 8 men handpicked by Fluckey himself. Olson William Walker, Francis Sever, Paul Saunders, Billy Hatfield, Lawrence Newland, James Richard, and John Bannister. Each man carries a sidearm, a knife, and packs of high-explosive demolition charges wrapped in waterproof canvas. Fluckey emerges from the conning tower, his breath clouding in the cold. Gentlemen, he says quietly, no one's ever done what you're about to do. No one's even been crazy enough to think it. But if we pull this off, the Japanese will know we can strike them anywhere, even in their own backyard. He pauses. You'll be alone for 20 minutes. If you're caught, we can't help you. There's no cavalry out here. Just the sea. The men nod. They know. They volunteered anyway. Then let's go make history, Fluckey says. 22 and 20 hours. The Barb's rubber boat slides into the freezing surf. The paddles dip in silence. The submarine vanishes into the dark behind them, its silhouette swallowed by mist. Keep low, Olson hisses, eyes on that ridge. They row in rhythm, hearts pounding. The coastline grows larger, black rocks, snow-covered pines, and the faint outline of telegraph poles leading inland. A dog barks somewhere far away. When the boat hits sand, they drag it ashore and crouch in the shadow of a dune. Sever whispers, hard to believe this is Japan. Olson mutters, keep your head down. Believe it later. They move quickly through the dunes, the snow crunching underfoot despite their care. The moon breaks through the clouds just long enough to reveal the glint of steel rails ahead the railway line. Fluckey's timing was perfect. No guards, no patrols, only the wind sighing through the trees. Olson signals halt. Set the charge here, between the ties. Hatfield kneels, his breath freezing on his scarf. He pulls out the explosive pack, connects the timer, a modified naval clock set for 2:30 a.m. Newland whispers, how long we got? 80 minutes, Olson replies. Plenty of time to run like hell. They work in silence. The only sound is the metallic click of tools and the distant creak of snow. So 20 hours. A low rumble cuts through the stillness. Walker freezes. Train. The others look up, lights flicker in the distance down the tracks. Jesus, someone breathes. It's early. Olson hisses, timer's set, we can't move it now. Back to the beach. They sprint through the drift's lungs, burning legs heavy. Behind them, the train's whistle echoes across the frozen plain. They reach the sand just as the first cars thunder past the kill zone. Olson drops to the ground, heart pounding, and checks his watch. Come on, come on! 2:30 on the dot. The night erupts. The ground jumps beneath them. A column of flame roars into the sky where the tracks had been. The sound hits a second later, a rolling thunder that drowns the sea itself. Metal screams splitting apart. Flames leap higher, lighting the men's faces in orange and gold. From their vantage point, they see train cars flying into the air like toys. One engine flips end over end before crashing into the snow. The explosion's echo bounces off the coastal cliffs like the world cracking open. For a long moment, no one moves. Then Walker whispers, awestruck, we blew up a train in Japan. Olson grins through chattering teeth. Hell yes, we did. They haul the rubber boat back into the surf waves, slapping at their legs. The horizon glows behind them, smoke and fire clawing at the stars. A light flashes offshore, 3 quick blinks from the Barb's signal lamp. Saunders mutters, that's our girl. They paddle furiously, muscles screaming until the black shape of the submarine rises before them. Hands reach down from the deck, pulling them aboard one by one. Fluckey is there waiting. His grin widens when he counts heads. 8 went out. 8 came back. That's a good night. Olson, shivering and soaked, salutes weakly. Mission accomplished, sir. Train's gone. Fluckey nods, looking toward the horizon where the fires still burn. Then so is their supply line. He turns to Lewis. Dive the boat. Set course north. Let's leave them wondering which island we'll visit next. 235 hours. The USS Barb slips beneath the surface for the last time that night, disappearing into the dark waters off Japan's coast. Behind them, the mainland burns. In the cities of Tokyo and Sapporo, Japanese High Command will receive a report. Before dawn, a train destroyed by unknown saboteurs believed to be Americans. No one will believe it at first, but they'll come to call it what it was, the only ground combat action on Japanese soil carried out by U.S. forces during the entire Second World War. As the submarine glides into deeper water, the men gather in the control room, soaked and shaking with adrenaline. Fluckey looks at them and says quietly, "Gentlemen, I think we've just made history and scared the living hell out of an empire." The men laugh softly, disbelief and pride mixing in the dim red light. Above them, the sea closes again, dark, cold, and silent. But on the coast of Sakhalin, the flames still climb into the sky, defying the night. January 24, 1945, Imperial Navy Headquarters, Tokyo. The air in the operations hall is thick with tobacco smoke and disbelief. Maps of the northern territories cover the walls, pins marking Convoy's patrol routes, and the thin black line of the Karafuto-Hokkaido Railway, the Empire's fragile northern artery. Rear Admiral Tomiji Koyanagi, Chief of Northern Operations, slams a telegram down on the table. "Explain this. Explain how enemy saboteurs set off explosives inside Karafuto Prefecture." An intelligence officer bows low. His voice trembles. "Sir, we believe it was a commando raid, possibly launched from a submarine." Koyanagi's jaw tightens. "A submarine? Impossible. The Americans wouldn't dare surface so close to our home waters, much less land men." "Yet, they did, Admiral." Another officer unrolls a reconnaissance photo. The black and white image shows a jagged scar through snow-covered terrain, twisted steel-burned train cars, and smoke still curling upward. Koyanagi stares at it in silence. He doesn't see wreckage. He sees humiliation. "How many dead?" 43, sir, including 2 officers of the Railway Defense Unit." He exhales slowly, the sound heavy with shame. "They've struck our soil for the first time since this war began." Meanwhile, aboard the USS Barb, somewhere in the Sea of Okhotsk, the men of the Barb sleep in shifts sprawled across bunks that feel almost soft after hours of terror. The air still smells faintly of mud and cordite, the scent of land clinging to a machine made for the sea. Commander Eugene Fluckey sits alone in the control room, sipping lukewarm coffee from a tin mug. He stares at the depth gauge, watching it hover steady at 120 feet. Lewis climbs down the ladder quietly. "Couldn't sleep either, sir." Fluckey shakes his head. "Too noisy in here." Lewis laughs softly. "Noisy." Fluckey taps the side of his head. "Up here, thinking about what we just did. You ever think about how small we are, Mr. Lewis? Just a steel cigar with 90 men inside, and somehow we've made the biggest empire in the Pacific blink." Lewis leans against the bulkhead. "You think they'll retaliate?" Fluckey smirks. "They'll try. But fear doesn't make you faster. It makes you sloppy. And right now they're afraid." He looks at the clock. "We'll transmit the patrol report when we clear the Curial chain. I want this on Admiral Lockwood's desk before Tokyo wakes up." 500 hours, January 25th. The Barb surfaces briefly in the icy gray dawn. Snow falls in thin sheets, blurring the horizon. A single antenna rises from the conning tower, transmitting in bursts, coded, Morse flashes that hop invisibly across the Pacific to Pearl Harbor. From USS Barb to Com Subpac, subject enemy railway attack successful. Train destroyed. 0 casualties. All hands safe. Signed, Fluckey. The message takes less than 30 seconds to send, but by the time it reaches midway relay, it will ignite disbelief and exhilaration across the entire Pacific Fleet. Fluckey lowers his binoculars and orders dive the boat. The hatch seals shut, and the Barb slips back beneath the gray waves, invisible again, a rumor wrapped in steel. January 26, 1945, Tokyo Imperial Army Staff College. The staff officers sit in silence as the telegram from Karafuto is read aloud. No one interrupts. The shame is too heavy. General Toshimichi Tanaka, one of the older commanders, finally breaks the quiet. Gentlemen, the Americans have shown they can strike anywhere. They've landed where we thought them incapable. If one submarine can do this, what will 100 do? A colonel protests weakly. We'll strengthen coastal defense, deploy more patrols. Tanaka slams his fist on the table. You still think in terms of numbers, the Americans think in ideas. While we repair our rails, they invent new ways to destroy them. They no longer fight to win, they fight to end. Silence again. No one dares to meet his eyes. Back aboard the Barb. The days pass in eerie calm. The sea remains gray, almost indifferent. The crew settles into routine drills, watch changes, jokes whispered between bunks. But the air carries a quiet pride, something unspoken but shared. Olsen leans against the torpedo room bulkhead, cleaning a wrench. Skipper's gone too far this time, he mutters to Walker. Walker grins. Too far, that's what we said last time. And the time before that. He's always right. Olsen chuckles. Yeah, guess I'll stop doubting him after he sinks Japan itself. That night, Fluckey gathers the officers in the control room. Gentlemen, he begins. Tokyo's got a fire under its ass right now. Their radio traffic's a mess. We're intercepting panic all the way from Hokkaido. They don't know what hit them. Some think it was paratroopers. Some think commandos came from the Kurils. But no one suspects a submarine. Lewis smirks. You've made ghosts of us, sir. Exactly, Fluckey says. And ghosts can go anywhere. He looks over the men. We've got enough fuel and food to stay on station another 10 days. Let's make every hour count. The more we haunt them, the faster this war ends. January 28, 1945. The Northern Pacific. In the radio room, the operator picks up a weak Japanese transmission, an emergency convoy broadcast. To all available escorts, convoy from Otaru to Wakkanai will depart 2200 hours. Extreme caution. Enemy submarine activity suspected. Fluckey leans over his shoulder, reading the Morse notes as they print. His eyes narrow. Convoy Otaru Wakkanai, he repeats. That's their resupply line to Sakhalin. He straightens up. Plot course north-northeast. Let's see if we can scare them twice in 1 week. Lewis blinks. Sir, after all this? You want another engagement? Fluckey grins. Son, I'm not greedy, just thorough. January 29th, 1945, 0300 hours. The Barb lies in wait again, engines off, drifting in the freezing dark. Above, faint lights wink on the horizon, another Japanese convoy crawling through the fog. Fluckey studies the pattern through his periscope. 3 merchants, 2 escorts. Perfect. He lowers the scope. Set depth 40 feet. Tubes 1 through 4 ready. Lewis nods, adjusting the firing solution. Range 100 yards. Bearing steady. Target lead freighter. Fluckey's tone softens. This is for every man who didn't make it back from the last patrol. Fire when ready. Fire 1. The submarine shudders slightly as the first torpedo leaves its tube. Fire 2. Fire 3, Fire 4. Moments later, the night explodes in a chain of orange blossoms across the horizon. The convoy disintegrates. 1 freighter breaks in half, another rolls belly up, the escorts firing wildly into empty sea. Olsen whoops from the aft room. Direct hits, 2 down. Fluckey watches through the periscope, his voice barely above a whisper. Let that be our goodbye. He lowers the scope. All ahead flank. Take her deep. Time to disappear again. The ocean closes over them once more, hiding the Barb and her crew from sight. The sea resumes its endless rhythm, erasing the evidence of yet another blow against an empire already cracking under its own weight. Inside, Fluckey exhales and finally allows himself a small smile. We came here to show them fear, he says quietly. And now they'll see it every time the sea moves. The men sit in silence, the weight of it sinking in. Somewhere far above, the wreckage burns a faint flickering light that no one on the surface will ever truly understand. February 3rd, 1945, North Pacific, 400 miles east of Hokkaido. The storm comes without warning. Winds tear across the sea at 40 knots, flattening waves into walls of foam and fury. The USS Barb rolls hard to port her conning tower, vanishing under sheets of black water. Every bolt in her hull groans under the strain. "Secure the deck!" Fluckey's voice cuts through the howl. "Rig for heavy weather." Below decks, men cling to pipes and bulkheads as the submarine bucks like a living thing. Dishes crash in the galley, books tumble from bunks. The red lights flicker. Chief Swede Olsen, gripping a handrail near the control room, yells above the noise. Feels like the sea's angry skipper. Fluckey braces himself against the ladder, seawater dripping from his coat. "Good," he shouts back. "Means she knows we're leaving." The men laugh despite the chaos. It's gallows humor, the kind that holds submariners together when the ocean tries to swallow them whole. 600 hours. The storm begins to fade. The sea's calm, though the submarine still pitches in long, heavy rolls. The air inside the hull is damp and metallic, every breath flavored with salt and oil. Fluckey sits at the plotting table, rubbing the stubble on his jaw. His XO, John Lewis, hands him a mug of coffee, black, lukewarm, perfect. Radio man reports, "Com subpack got our last transmission," Lewis says. "They're calling it the most daring act in submarine history." Fluckey sips, unimpressed. "They're just mad they didn't think of it first." Lewis smirks. "They also said to bring you in for immediate debrief." Fluckey leans back. "Good. Maybe they'll believe me this time when I tell them rockets work better than speeches." He looks around the control room at the men half dozing in their stations, gaunt, filthy, but alive. "You ever think, Mr. Lewis," he says quietly, "that every one of these boys has seen something no one else on Earth ever will?" Lewis nods slowly. "Ain't that what war does? Turns men into ghosts while they're still breathing." Fluckey studies him for a moment. "Maybe. But I'd rather be a ghost who fought back than a saint who waited for peace." He sets the mug down. "All right. Plot course for Midway. We'll refuel there before heading home to Pearl." February 9th, 1945, Midway Atoll. The Pacific is calm again, impossibly calm. After weeks of steel and storms, the turquoise lagoon feels unreal, almost fragile. The Barb eases into the harbor, her scarred hull shining beneath the sunlight. Sailors on the pier stare as she approaches. Some salute, others just shake their heads. The rumors had spread faster than the boat itself, a submarine that bombed Japan, sank convoys, and blew up a train. As the crew steps off barefoot and exhausted, someone in the crowd starts clapping. It spreads a ripple through the sailors, then officers, until the whole pier echoes with applause. Fluckey tips his cap slightly, expression calm. "Easy, boys," he says to his men. "You'll start believing your own legends." Debriefing room, Midway Command Center. Rear Admiral Lockwood greets him with a handshake and a grin. "Eugene, you son of a gun, you really did it." Fluckey shrugs. "You asked me to harass the enemy admiral. I just took the word literally." Lockwood laughs. "The Japanese are calling it sabotage by ghosts. They've doubled their coastal patrols from Tokyo to Sapporo. They're terrified." "Good," Fluckey says. "Fear's a better weapon than torpedoes." Lockwood slides a manila folder across the desk. Inside are the reconnaissance photos, the destroyed train, the wrecked convoys, the smoking harbors of Sakhalin. "You realize," Lockwood says softly, "what you've done here will be taught in academies long after we're gone." Fluckey nods, almost wistful. "Just make sure they remember the crew. The boat's only as brave as the men who drive her." February 12th, 1945, Pearl Harbor. The USS Barb docks to a hero's welcome. Cameras flash. Navy bands play. But Fluckey keeps his distance from the noise. He stands on the pier, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the Pacific horizon. Lewis walks up beside him. "Sir, the press wants a statement. Something about the strike that shook Japan." Fluckey chuckles. "Tell them we just gave the ocean back its echo." Lewis laughs softly. That'll confuse 'em, Good Fluckey says. Let 'em work for it. That night, under a full moon, the crew gathers on deck one last time before liberty. The smell of fuel sea and sweat mixes with the cool, tropical air. Olsen plays a harmonica. Others hum along. Someone passes around a bottle of whiskey, contraband, of course. Fluckey joins them, leaning against the deck gun. Gentlemen, he says, raising his glass to the ones who didn't come back. And to the ones who did. They raise theirs in return. To the Barb. The sound rings out across the quiet harbor, caught in the wind, echoing off the water. For a moment, even the war feels far away. 3 days later, Navy Command, Pearl Harbor. Fluckey's official citation is typed and filed. For extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry in action. Commander Eugene B. Fluckey led his submarine and crew in an unprecedented assault upon the enemy homeland, inflicting severe damage to Japanese logistics and morale with no loss of life to his command. A secretary folds the paper neatly, unaware she's holding history. Outside, seagulls circle above the calm Pacific. The war is still raging, but for the men of the Barb, this chapter is over. Their mission, the impossible mission, is complete. Fluckey writes one last line in his personal log before sealing it away. We went where submarines were never meant to go, and came back with proof that courage is the deadliest weapon of all. He closes the book and exhales. The war for him is no longer about numbers or ships sunk. It's about the 8 men who came back from the dark, leaving behind a trail of smoke and legend. The USS Barb, the ghost of the North Pacific, would soon return to sea, one final patrol before the war's end. But her legacy had already reached the shores of Japan, and the hearts of men who now believed the impossible was possible. March 14, 1945, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The sun is low over the harbor when the USS Barb, SS-220, readies for her 12th and final patrol. The deck crew moves with quiet precision, lines coiled, hatches sealed, ammunition loaded. The submarine gleams like black glass under the light, her patched scars hidden beneath fresh paint. On her conning tower, a new emblem has been stenciled in white, 8 stars and a train. Commander Eugene Fluckey stands on the pier with Admiral Charles Lockwood, who watches the preparations with a mixture of pride and sorrow. You've already done enough for 3 wars, Eugene, the Admiral says. You could have stayed ashore. Fluckey shakes his head. Sir, this boat's not finished yet. There's still work to do before the fat lady sings. Lockwood sighs. You realize if you get sunk now, the Navy'll build a statue out of guilt. Fluckey grins. Then make sure they sculpt my good side. He offers a crisp salute, turns, and climbs the gangway. The lines are cast off. The Barb slips quietly out of Pearl, her bow pointing west into the sunset, toward one last rendezvous with history. April 2, 1945, East China Sea. War has changed. The empire that once ruled the Pacific is crumbling, but its death throes are violent. Kamikaze aircraft scream down on U.S. fleets around Okinawa, and the seas are thick with debris and ghosts. Beneath the waves, the Barb hunts among the remnants. Sound contact. Chief Jones calls from sonar. Bearing 270 range, 3,000 yards, screws turning slow merchant type. Fluckey moves to the periscope. Bring her up to 60 feet. Let's take a look. Water drips down the lens as the scope pierces the surface. Through the gray mist, he spots it, a small freighter blacked out, crawling south with no escort. Lewis stands beside him. Looks like a straggler, sir. Fluckey nods. Alone means unlucky. Fire 2. A muffled whoosh fills the control room. 30 seconds later, the freighter erupts in flame, its hull splitting clean in 2. Hit confirmed, Lewis reports. Fluckey lowers the scope. Mark it. 1 more off their books. The following weeks are a blur of constant motion hunting, stalking, striking. Convoys scatter before them like minnows before a shark. The Barb's crew moves as one, a symphony of instinct and discipline. By the time April turns to May, they've sunk 4 more ships and survived 3 separate depth charge hunts. But every victory feels quieter now. The thrill has faded, replaced by something heavier, the weight of the war's end creeping closer. May 10, 1945, 240 miles southeast of the Korean peninsula. Skipper radio from Pearl, the communications officer shouts. Germany's surrendered. The control room falls silent. The men glance at each other, disbelief, relief, exhaustion, all tangled together. Fluckey leans against the chart table. So it's over. For them. Lewis asks softly, You think Japan will quit now? Fluckey shakes his head. No. They'll fight until someone stops them. And until that day, we keep doing what we do. He looks around at the crew. Set course for the Tsushima Strait. One more sweep before we go home. The men nod. No one questions him. They know this is how warriors let go, by doing their duty one last time. May 17th, 1945. Tsushima Strait. The water here is treacherous, shallow, narrow, full of mines and currents that pull at the hull like unseen hands. The Barb creeps forward at 2 knots, every man hyper-aware of the danger. Jones whispers from sonar contacts ahead, multiple small screws, maybe patrol boats. Fluckey listens, then grins. They're looking for ghosts again. He turns to Lewis. We'll give them one. Sir, set tube 7 for wakeless shot depth 6 feet. Target bearing 240, range 900 yards. Let's leave them a little surprise before we go. Lewis smirks. A farewell gift, Fluckey nods. Exactly. The torpedo launches silently. 20 seconds later, a thunderous explosion rips through the night. The patrol boat vanishes in a burst of fire and spray. Fluckey checks his watch. Gentlemen, I'd say we've just concluded our business with the Imperial Navy. May 20th, 1945, mid-Pacific. The USS Barb sets course east, her final patrol complete. The sea around her glows faintly under the moonlight, calm and endless. Inside, the crew relaxes for the first time in months. In the mess hall, Olsen plays a slow tune on his harmonica, while others write letters home. Lewis reads a tattered newspaper from Pearl Allied bombers devastate Tokyo again. Fluckey sits quietly at the table, a mug of cold coffee in hand. Thinking about what comes next, Lewis asks. Fluckey smiles faintly. About what doesn't come next, actually. For the first time, maybe we won't have to plan another patrol. He glances around at the men, weary faces, hollow eyes, but alive. They'll go home, Mr. Lewis. Some'll farm. Some'll teach. Some'll drink too much. But they'll all remember the deep. Lewis nods slowly. And you, sir, Fluckey chuckles. Me, I'll probably just keep trying to blow up things no one thinks can be blown up. The 2 men laugh softly. Outside, the sea stretches quiet and infinite, the waves whispering against the hull like old friends. June 4th, 1945, Pearl Harbor. The Barb glides into her berth for the last time. The crew lines the deck in dress blues. The band plays faintly from the dock, anchors away, rising and falling in the humid air. Fluckey salutes as the flag is lowered from the mast. The moment feels heavier than any battle. Admiral Lockwood greets him at the pier. Welcome home, Eugene. She's done her part. Fluckey looks back at the submarine, the steel, the scars, the soul of it. Aye, Admiral. She's done more than her part. Lockwood places a hand on his shoulder. You know they're already calling her the most successful sub of the war. Fluckey smiles softly. Then let's hope we never need another like her. That night, the crew gathers one last time at a small bar in Honolulu. They drink not to victory, but to survival. To the sea that took so much and somehow gave them back to it. Olsen raises a glass. To the Barb, the boat that went to hell and came back laughing. Fluckey nods. And to the men who proved that courage doesn't need witnesses. They drink in silence, the Pacific breeze drifting through the open doors. Outside, the harbor lights shimmer like stars on the water. The war is not yet over, but for the Barb and her crew, their story has already entered legend. August 15th, 1945, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The radio crackles through the humid morning. Static at first, then a trembling voice. To all Allied forces, the Emperor of Japan has announced his nation's surrender. Hostilities are to cease immediately. In the officers' quarters of the USS Barb, the words fall like a bell through still air. For a long moment, no one speaks. The men simply look at each other. A dozen faces frozen in disbelief, exhaustion, and something else that doesn't yet have a name. Commander Eugene Fluckey sets down his coffee stands and walks to the open hatch. Outside, the harbor shimmers under the morning sun. Ships blow their whistles. Distant cheering ripples across the piers. The war, 6 years of fire and ocean, has ended with a sentence. He exhales slowly, the tension of months leaving him all at once. "It's over," he murmurs. "We actually lived to see it." Behind him, John Lewis appears in the doorway, still in his undershirt, eyes wide. "Skipper, they really quit." Fluckey turns, a small smile breaking across his face. "They did, Mr. Lewis. The Empire just ran out of ocean." Later that day, deck of the USS Barb. The crew gathers under a sky filled with sunlight and gulls. No orders, no drills, just quiet. A few of the men bring up boxes of rationed cigars they'd saved for this day, though none truly believed it would come. Fluckey stands by the conning tower, cap in hand. "Men," he begins, "we started this war as hunters. We end it as witnesses." He pauses, scanning their faces. "What we did out there, the convoys, the harbors, the railway, those weren't just missions. They were proof that ingenuity and guts can change the tide of war." He gestures toward the sea. "That ocean out there took thousands of ships, millions of souls, but we brought something back from it, a promise that no crew, no matter how small, is ever powerless." The men listen in silence. A few wipe their eyes, not from sorrow, but from the unbearable release of it all. Fluckey clears his throat. "I can't promise what comes next. Maybe we'll never ride a sub again. Maybe we'll spend the rest of our days trying to forget what we saw. But I'll tell you this, no one will ever forget the Barb." He raises his cap in salute. The men mirror him, wordless. Across the harbor, ships sound their horns in a long, echoing chorus, the sound of peace rising from steel. September 2nd, 1945, USS Missouri, Tokyo Bay. On the other side of the Pacific, history is being written in ink. General MacArthur stands on the deck of the battleship Missouri, the Japanese delegation stiff and pale before him. The cameras click. The papers are signed. The world breathes again. Far from the ceremony, anchored in Pearl, the USS Barb rests quietly, her crew listening to the radio broadcast. The voice of the announcer drifts through the control room speakers. "At this hour, the instruments of surrender have been signed. The Second World War is officially over." Olson mutters, "Guess that means we're out of a job." Lewis smiles faintly. "Hell of a resume, though." Fluckey sits in silence, eyes closed. He hears the words, surrender, peace, victory, but all he can see are faces. The men who never came back from patrols, the convoys that burned, the ghostly shapes that sank without a sound. After a while, he opens his eyes and says softly, "There's no such thing as a quiet victory at sea." September 20th, 1945, decommissioning dock, Pearl Harbor. The process is cold, mechanical, indifferent. The USS Barb, hero of the northern seas, is being stripped. Torpedoes offloaded, instruments logged, paint scraped. Her engines fall silent for the last time. Fluckey walks her length alone, fingertips brushing the steel. Every rivet, every weld holds a memory. The crash of waves, the hum of battle stations, the smell of oil and ozone before the rockets fired. Lewis joins him near the bow. "Hard to believe she's finished." Fluckey nods. "Boats don't die, Mr. Lewis. They just go quiet." He looks at the deck one last time. "She'll be remembered long after the rest of us are dust. That's how legends work." They stand together as the dock crane hoists the submarine's flag down. The fabric ripples once in the Pacific breeze, then folds into silence. Epilogue. Years later. Decades pass. In a small naval museum in Washington, a child stands before a display case. Inside rests a faded battle flag embroidered with white stars, and beneath them an odd stitched outline of a locomotive. His father, a veteran himself, leans down to read the plaque aloud. USS Barb, SS 220. The only submarine to launch rockets against Japan, and the only U.S. vessel to land men on Japanese soil during the Second World War. Commanded by Eugene Bennett Fluckey. The boy frowns. "Dad, why a train?" The father smiles faintly. Because sometimes, son, the smallest spark derails the biggest engine. They move on, leaving the glass case behind. But the story stays woven into steel and sea, into the long hum of history that never really fades. That night, as the museum lights dim, the reflection of the flag flickers faintly in the glass, like waves on metal. Somewhere deep beneath that quiet surface, the ocean still remembers. And if you listen closely enough, you can almost hear it, the hum of engines, the rush of water. The echo of a commander's voice whispering through the dark, "Dive the boat. Let's see what's waiting beyond the horizon."